Hey, welcome to Bricks LA Builder Spotlight. I'm Aileen and I'm here with the indomitable Alan Corbet.
Hello,
Hi, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm very well, thank you. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. As an adult fan of Lego, how long have you been involved with the adult Lego community? What kind of brought you to building? Tell us all about why you're into the brick.
Well, like everybody else, it's part of the AFOL community. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people started out as a fan when I was a kid. And then I had a colleague when I was in the restaurant business that a friend and colleague, he was getting married and he scored this huge container of Lego from one of his groomsmen. He actually asked somebody to be his groomsman, but the person couldn't afford to pay for the tuxedo. So he made him a deal. You give me all your childhood Lego and I'll pay for your tux for my wedding. And the guy handed over this massive container and my buddy Shane, he invited me over to his place to see this Lego, and it inspired me to go home afterwards and dig out my bucket of Lego. And I realized that, being the age I am, all of my Lego was nowhere near as interesting as his. And so I bought a few sets, and then I bought a few more, and then I saw a picture of Cafe Corner, and that was it for me.
Oh, the modulars. So the modular is what really helped draw you back in?
Yeah, as soon as I saw a really terrible, fuzzy, leaked picture of Cafe Corner, I'm like, wow. And I started putting as many pieces as I could together to build a building to go next to it because I knew I was going to buy it. Ended up buying two of them, and I've bought in every single one since then, except for Market Street. I didn't get it. I didn't get Market Street, but
Ooh, fancy buying two cafe corners.
yeah.
Man, I want to go to your house and play with your
I wish
Lego.
I would have kept one in the box though, but didn't.
Hey, you never know what you're supposed to keep in the box.
I usually buy for me, not for resale. So
I was going to say, I'm a big fan personally of take it out of the box and play with it. So
yeah.
that's my philosophy. So you're right on track. All right. So you've been building with the adult community for many years. You've been building all sorts of different models. You have quite a variety of mocks. My own creation, which is kind of a silly acronym, but that is what we use in the Lego community. So you have a bunch of different types of mocks, including, I know you do like trains, you do buildings, you can see some of the things you've worked on behind you.
Yeah.
You have trees that are just so intricate, I could stare at them for hours. You have cars. I mean, where do you get your inspiration? What makes you go, that's something I'm going to build?
It it varies with me. Like I've heard people's stories talk about how they just take some pieces and they get inspiration from the pieces, and they've got the table scraps that sit there, and sometimes it turns into something, sometimes it doesn't. Some people take inspiration from driving down the street and seeing a building or a car that they want to reproduce in Lego. Some people sit there with a piece of graph paper and just plan it out in their heads, or go on to some kind of digital designer or something like that and build their model virtually. I haven't done that yet. I tried it once and it drove me bonkers. Couldn't get the pieces to do the illegal things that wouldn't the program wouldn't allow it to do. So I just like forget it. But I've been inspired by putting together pieces, table scraps, and I've done the graph paper thing. I've done the driving down a street in Vancouver and looking at a building. I'm like, I could do that with these pieces. And then I rush home after work, go straight to my Lego sorting system and start grabbing pieces and seeing if I can pull off what I saw. Uh, and that's pretty much. Sometimes I'll go into the Lego store and see a piece on the wall and like, I know what I'm going to do with that.
So you kind of
Never
take
have thought about
inspiration.
it before. Just look at the piece and like, that's going to be a tree, or that's going to be, the top of
Really?
the building, or
So you
yeah.
take inspiration both from pieces themselves and from, I mean, like you said, just anything around you in your neighborhood.
And
That's
sometimes
awesome.
just seeing things in real life evolves my mocks. So if I came up with the evergreen tree that with the clips.
Hmm.
Um,
Which is
I don't,
amazing.
I'm not sure if I was the first person, but as far as I know, I was one of the first people to do that. And I was walking on a hike in the summertime after I built that, and like, real trees have moss hanging from them in the forest. I got to come up with a way of putting moss hanging from the tree. So
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Just inspired by everything around you, nature, the
yeah,
city. That's great. So you're kind of always thinking in the brick mindset.
yeah, it drives my family nuts sometimes, I think. But
That's okay. That's why you can come to Lego meetings and do Lego things and go to Lego conventions.
yeah,
Get it out of your system. So you mentioned something that was actually kind of very interesting. Uh, the what you called it in the virtual building, you called it an illegal connection. So some people who are just getting into the hobby, or maybe they are not as uh, involved in the AFOL side of things, they may not know exactly what you're talking about. So would you care to explain a little?
I guess it's what's considered not a conventional Lego connection, something that you would find um, you wouldn't find in most sets. I know that Lego has done things in the past that they no longer do, but seem to have adapted again later in later years. So what was legal has become illegal and then legal again. You know, it's just I guess a technique that is outside the realm that Lego itself won't use.
Right. So for people who are building at home, that's, you're clicking the bricks together, like the instructions saying, that's kind of what we call a legal technique. But an illegal one might be turning a brick or a plate on its side and putting it between two studs,
Yeah,
which
like
it fits. Trust, if you're at home right now, try it.
that's what
Exactly.
that.
Illegal. But luckily there's no Lego police, so it's okay.
That'd be fun.
To be the Lego police?
No, to be arrested by the Lego police.
Oh,
As long as the
ridiculous.
jail's built out of Lego and you got a free supply of Lego and food, I can handle that.
So could you tell me about one of your more recent builds that you've done that you've like to talk about?
I think my most recent build. Well, I did a Halloween display, but it's not all mocks. That was with the Lego haunted house and just some scenery around it. But I did build a modular building, and it was inspired by a friend set as part of my friendly neighborhood series. It's had the salon in the bottom, and then 3 stories on top of that. Had a little garden entry on the side, and
Mhm.
some ivy growing up the building, little rooftop picnic scene, and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun to build. So
So you spend a lot of time, I know, for instance, your memory lane,
yes,
uh, that along with your other buildings, like you were just talking about I'm so sorry, it was
uh, my friendly neighborhood.
friendly neighborhood. I'm so sorry. I'll
I'm a
remember that next time.
fan, and there's Lego Friends. I couldn't resist calling
No,
it
no, no. It
Friendly
totally
Neighborhood.
works. So you've got friendly neighborhood, and I remember seeing your memory lane in person, which is amazing. And what blew me away is it's not just the buildings that are so well done, but you pay so much attention to the details. I mean, I know that mock had, like the little rooftop garden. I mean, there's graffiti on the wall. There was a couple little, like Easter eggs, things you need to see in person on
Exactly.
that one. There's so much going on. I know some people specialize, they might build really great buildings, but they don't necessarily build the inside. They don't decorate the inside. So do you favor doing one or the other? Do you enjoy both equally? Like, the little micro inside builds versus huge buildings?
Well, before I go into that, I just want to shout out Dave Geddes for being 50% of Memory Lane. He did a
Absolutely.
bunch of that stuff, so I just don't want to forget about him there. But when it comes to buildings, my priority is getting, like, I like it when I build a modular building that people have to double take it, like take a double take when they look at the picture. Is that like a real building, or is that a Lego building? Um, that I really enjoy. So I guess outside aesthetics are sort of my priority. Um, I will try to do an interior on the inside bottom floor of all of my modular buildings. Um, I do tend to get lazy as the stories go up. And a lot of times, I guess it wasn't necessarily lazy, but somebody pointed out to me that a lot of times you have all those little pieces like the lamps or a tree out in front or road signs or stuff on top of the building that's going to fall off.
Mhm.
Having that top story empty just to put everything in, and then put the roof back on and put in a box, you don't have to worry about it spilling out or, falling out of the box or anything like that. So it's locked nice and tightly in the top story of the building. So shh, don't tell anybody.
So it's
Usually
also storage. That's
modular
great.
buildings are storage. I've even had one building that's a 32 by 64, and I put a bunch of cars all on the top floor. And then I open it up, take the cars out, put them on the street in front, and then I'm done.
Hey, that's a brilliant use of the medium, you know?
Until you forget a car inside and somebody's looking in, is that a headlight? Yeah.
Just tell him it's Jay Leno's building and he keeps one of his cars there. It's fine.
Yeah.
No big deal. So do you find that when you're building, do you build for fun, like on no timeline, or do you find you build better when you have an event or a deadline or something that you're building for?
It would depend. If I'm building for me, I will build, it could take me weeks to build one modular building. If I get to the point where I'm like, I'm not sure what to do with a particular part of it, or I'm not satisfied with the way it's coming together, I just walk away from it for a week, and then I come back to it, and it's fine. When it's something that I'm doing with the VLC, which is the local lug that I belong to, some of the builds that we do for those shows really challenge me. They get me outside of my comfort zone. Sometimes it's building Town and Train, which is right up my alley, and then other times it'll be something like mythology, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do for mythology? And so when it comes to those things, I like having a deadline. It really forces me, and sometimes I come up with some great stuff when I'm put on the spot and have to get it done quickly. And I do procrastinate. Not
Don't
as
we
bad
all?
as my friends in the club, but yeah.
So you were talking about the club. Well, Lug, in case people don't know, you may have seen it in some of our other videos. That is a Lego user group, which is there are hundreds of Lego user groups around the world, and that's where adults and aspiring builders meet to share ideas and get together and share their creations. And it's a really cool way to be involved with the community. How long have you been involved with the VLC?
I'd seen a bunch of the shows they had done locally for about 2-3 years before I got involved in the club. So it was 2006 when I became an official member. It was about 2 years later that they were silly enough to elect me the president. And yeah, a lot of things changed over the years, and the numbers doubled and quadrupled. And so it's nice size now, and lots of great people in there. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not a bad thing. That's more people to share your Lego with, right?
exact. Wait, what?
Well, not share your Lego, share your creations, your builds,
Yeah,
inspiration, all that good stuff.
exactly.
No, don't worry. You don't have to share your Lego, Alan. All right. So we were talking a little bit about inspiration and building, and you said that you don't use modeling software, of which there are many different kinds out on the internet, that you can actually like build a little creation before you build it, so you know what parts you need. Do you find that you plan a mock out, like you plan your model first, or maybe even build it out of colors that aren't right, or pieces that aren't right, so you kind of get a feel for it? Or do you kind of just jump in and start like building it correctly? You know what I mean?
Okay, so I have built modular buildings in some of my mocks over a long period of time, bricklinking things, then realizing I didn't get enough, having to order more. And I've had one mock take me probably almost a year to build because of that. Just because I come back to it, didn't know what I was going to do here, order more pieces. Eventually it got done. Other mocks, I'll find I just get the idea, and the idea I had, I made that happen, but the rest of it had to come together. Like, say I got the main floor of the modular building all done, but I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of it. And sometimes I find a lot of joy in finding pieces within my collection already to make it happen. And it forces me to be creative and think outside the box. And sometimes, I don't have the latest, newest pieces that, would be perfect for what I want to do. But then I go to my collection, I'm like, I could probably take these 3 pieces, do what that one piece does. Sure, it's going to be more piece intensive and it's going to be interesting to make the right connections, but sometimes I find a lot of joy in that challenge. So,
I was gonna say that's one of the interesting things about Lego though, there might be a correct piece, but maybe it doesn't come in the right color for the model you're building or, quite the right size. Oh man, I've had lots of things that don't come in the right size yet. Um, but there's always some workaround or some other way to achieve that effect or that visual effect that you're looking for. So I always find it interesting to find out how other builders, tackle those sort of issues. So how about something like your Red Rocket build from Fallout 4? Was that like, I mean, you kind of had a model to go off of because that was from a video game. So you had an idea like, okay, I want it to look like this.
yep.
Did you jump in knowing, okay, I have an idea on where to start, or was it like, nope, let's just brick by
Well,
brick see how this comes together?
the Red Rocket is pretty much Keith Reed's fault. He's doing this whole Fallout shelter thing, and he wanted to do the whole like a surface scene because there was the modular Fallout shelter.
Right. So Red Rocket would be on top of all these other.
Yeah, and so he wanted to have the surface, and I've always been bad for taking dares, and it seemed like a dare that he had thrown out my way and said, "Alan, you're really good at these modular buildings. You should try this." And I'm like, "But I like a little dinge, but this is downright dilapidated, falling apart." And I'm like, that's really outside my comfort zone. Like I
Too much,
like doing like the back of my modular buildings with alleys and garbage and you know,
too
you
much
know, I
apocalypse.
used to even use some discolored bricks. Like, if you have a white wall, you use some of those old yellowed white bricks to really show the back alley.
Clever.
But when it came to the Red Rocket, I'm like thinking, do I really want to do it? And I kind of turned him down at first. And then I don't know why he mentioned it again. And then I brought it up to my kids. And the next thing I know, they're setting up the Xbox in my living room and making me play Fallout 4. And they wouldn't play it for me to get me to the Red Rocket. They told me, "Oh, you've got to make it there." And so they made me get there. And then my daughter's like, "And you have to put dog meat in there." I'm like, "What?" "You'll see. It's a German Shepherd. You'll see." And sure enough, you get to the Red Rocket station, and there's a German Shepherd there. And of course, the Lego German Shepherd works perfectly for that.
Absolutely. See, sometimes these things just come together and you're like, oh, well, I have the piece for that. That's perfect.
And I think it's almost worse that they made me play because I walked around that building so many times and I'm like, okay, the pylon goes there. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm going to be like obsessing over making sure that pylon goes right there.
So it's not necessarily easier sometimes when you have something to build directly off of, like a picture or a video game or something like that. Because for you, you're saying it's could almost be obsessive about details like that.
Yeah, it's almost like if you like drive down the street in your local city and you see a building and you want to recreate it. And you get home and you're like, that doesn't translate into Lego very well. You have an artistic license to mess around with it a little because unless you've told somebody, I'm building this building,
Mhm.
they're not going to be looking for those particular details. And
It's just a building.
even if you do tell them, they have to drive down that street and pay enough attention to notice that you've altered something. But with something like the Red Rocket, it's so iconic that, you know, I was waiting for somebody to pick apart something. Luckily, most people, I think the only one thing somebody picked apart was like, I got the free Fallout fig from, I think it was Eclipse Graphics or something like that, sponsored it. But it's got 604 on the back, which is the area code for the city that I live in. And instead of having the correct number on his back, somebody's like, 604, that's not a Fallout number. So,
That's
you know,
funny.
I tried to even have the lettering on the top of the building, the remaining letters that spelt out Red Rocket, be the same letters that were in the game. So
Wow.
it's not like they were just random. I tried to make the R, the E, the D was missing, and then an R. It just, you know,
As accurate as possible.
yeah. Although if I would have been really accurate, I would have done the lettering on the other side of the building too. But
Hey, you only have so much time to build, right? And
yeah,
personally, I think it's amazing. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. You do so many pieces of amazing work. That one also, the colors really stood out, just really nice model.
Yeah, I think the scale of the rocket, like I know there's a bunch of people that have built the red rocket. You know, after I started building it, I found a few other people's. Like there's somebody from Australia that did one, and his is a much larger scale, but the rocket is smaller.
Hmm.
And I think there's something about the scale of the rocket I built on mine that sort of really stands out.
Yeah, it's
And
very eye-catching.
yeah,
Okay, so for something like that, you have your model and you need to make it look like this thing that people are very familiar with in pop culture. So when you move on to something like your really fantastic and beautiful trees, is that more relaxing to you as a builder? Because I mean, you're not going to be like, I was modeling it after this specific tree. You kind of have license to do whatever you want, especially with foliage and landscape and things like that. Is that more relaxing and fun?
not really.
Oh
I
no.
just when I get into a mock, it's just it. I'm in the moment. I
Okay.
enjoy the process, and then I really appreciate the mock afterwards. And then I start working on the next one, and I'm like, yeah, that one's old now. It's kind of weird. I looked back at some of my mocks. I'm like, yeah, I could have done that better. But I'm not one for taking things apart and rebuilding things.
Mm.
I dread it if any of my favorite mocks actually get dropped or broken because they'll probably be gone forever. I probably won't build them again.
I can kind of understand that. There, you've been there, done that. Move
Yeah.
on to the new thing, whatever the new thing is. So some other interesting projects that you have moved on to and worked on were actually commissions and things you've done for other companies. Would you like care to talk about any of those things? Because I think you've got some fascinating jobs you've done.
Well, one of the one of the most stressful ones for me was actually for Toys R Us building a vase. Yeah, they
Which
paid.
sounds like it shouldn't be that stressful.
It was just trying to get because they wanted it built out of bricks, so nothing, no fancy shapes, or
Mhm.
fancy pieces. They wanted it built out of bricks.
They want it to clearly look like Lego.
And they sent me this picture of a Lego vase that they had seen online. They said like this, but then they sent a picture of an actual vase, but more like this. And I was like, you can't get those curves out of bricks. And the two that so I did build a vase, and I had a friend of mine help me out because I guess two different people from the advertising agency that was working for Toys R Us approached two different people. And so they approached me and this guy named JD that was also into Lego, and he and I were both at the Lego store at the same time and looking for the same kind of pieces, and just happened to talk about, why are you getting these pieces? Oh, 'cause
Really?
I'm doing this project for an advertising agency. I'm like, does it happen to be for Toys R Us? And he's like, oh, yeah.
No,
So we ended
I
up
didn't
working
know
on it
that.
together, and we split the money, and it was we he came over to my place. We busted it out in one evening, but it's still, we took it apart and rebuilt it probably 3 times before we were happy with it. And that's why it was kind of stressful. It's like getting
Mhm.
this thing that neither of us were really super into building and pulling it off. But that was a boring one compared to building for the Flash TV show. That was a lot of.
That's pretty cool that you were able to do something for them. So you built it was like a landscape, like a park?
Yeah, it was because they were filming in Vancouver. There's a Centennial Park, I believe it is, in Vancouver, and it's where the big Remembrance Day celebrations happen. Uh, so there's a big concrete area. They were less interested in that, but there was these stairs at the other end of the park, and there was these two buildings and an alleyway, and the Flash was standing by the alleyway, and a villain was standing over by the stairs with, I guess, the Flash's love interest being held captive. I don't want to give too much away just in case people haven't watched seasons ago.
I think
But
they've had time, but I understand.
yeah, so there was the premise of it was the Flash. It was a model that was sitting in, I guess, the laboratory, and one of the Flash's friends had built a Lego model of the park and these two buildings to represent the Flash had to get from point A to point B to save her, but the villain was faster than the Flash, so he had to get there in less time than he normally could.
Okay. And
So
obviously you need a Lego model
there's
to
obviously
show how to
time
do that.
travel involved, because how would they have known that? But yeah, the odd thing was is they ended up using it more than once.
Really?
So they used it in a couple episodes initially, and then later on in the season, there was an episode where some of the characters got shrunk and they were placed in the Lego scene that we built.
Oh, how cool is that? That must be cool to like see something you built, you know, not just once for the reason you built it, but used again and again. So that one also, I think you mentioned, had kind of an interesting story about the first iteration that you handed in, your first time handing in your assignment.
Well, we hadn't handed the full thing, and we had been working on the park and some of the buildings and the road. And this was another project that Dave Geddes and I, or Lettuce, worked on together. And we sent some pictures, some progress pictures, because they wanted to make sure that we were on track. And they're like, that's not going to work for us. That's too polished. We need it to look more like Lego. Can you dumb it down a little and make it look like Lego? And we're like, so you don't want any tiles on the sidewalk, or you don't want the road to look smooth? Nope, no, we want studs everywhere. And the trees were too sophisticated, so we had to make, simpler trees. It was
So they would really
bizarre.
look like Lego.
Yeah, it was really, really bizarre for us. Like the buildings, they didn't make us take those apart, but they looked far nicer than the rest of it. Was just bizarre.
That's an interesting building. I find that very fascinating. It's kind of like the vase story that you were just telling, that they want it brick built. They want it to look very like Lego, especially on camera. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I love that that commercial that Toys R Us had too.
What happened in the commercial?
In the commercial, the kids broke their mother's vase. One kid sweeping it up, the other kid starts building it out of Lego, and then they
That's
placed this
adorable.
Lego vase where the vase was. So
That's adorable. I have not seen that commercial. I will
so
have
they
to.
stay off the naughty list. It was a Christmas commercial.
That's actually really, really good commercial for Toys R Us.
It was really short too. It was like, I think they edited it and made it tell that story in like a 30-second spot.
Fantastic. All right, so you do all this amazing building, and you have all these varieties of things, and I must ask, because it's the burning question on everyone's mind: do you sort by color or by type of part?
By part.
You sort by part. Do you have are you strongly like, that's the sorting system that works for you, nothing else will do?
Yeah.
Some people
Sorting
feel
by
very
part.
strongly. Some people kind of switch back and forth.
Sorting by part, like if I've got like a larger container full of one particular part, I might have Ziploc bags. If I happen to, have a bulk order or something of that one part in one color, I'm not going to dump it in and mix it in with the rest of the colors. I'll keep it in a Ziploc bag in a separate. So there are some sorting by color within the sorting by shape system, but when you start out sorting by color, which I did, and you get this big bin of red, and you need a specific shape or size of plate or brick, and you're digging through this big container of all red, and you realize you could have built the entire thing in the time it took you to find 4 parts. Just no.
And your cuticles are gone and your nails are torn.
Like you're missing a piece to a set that you just picked up online or something like that. You go right to your sorting system, you open the drawer, there you go, there's the piece. Or if you don't have that color, you're like, I guess I need to order it because it's not in that drawer.
Absolutely.
That's
All
I
right,
can't
so you are
imagine
by
having the size of collection I have now, sorting by color. I think I'd still be working on my first modular building.
good to know. Good to know. All right, so speaking of, your first was a modular building. Do you have a dream build? Because you've built all these wonderful things and variety of models. Do you have a thing that's like, oh, if I had unlimited money, unlimited access to Lego, all that, is there like a dream build for you?
I get super jealous when you go online and you see these people on YouTube and stuff like that that have their basement town layouts and stuff like that. I would love to do that. I tend to, because of the space I have, think in modules or series. So I've unfortunately my brain's always working. So I've got the friendly neighborhood on the go. I have a Chinatown I want to series I want to build for um, like Chinatown inspired modulars. I've got my Going West that's going to evolve into a series, and I just keep coming up with these ideas, and I don't have the time or the space to pull them all off at the same time. So it seems like it's going to be drawn out, but they'll eventually happen.
That's awesome. So do you have any advice for aspiring builders, especially adults that maybe have refound the hobby or are interested in maybe getting into Lego, maybe more so than just building, the sets that they buy at the store? Do you have any advice for how they should approach entering the hobby?
Well, if you're entering the hobby and you aren't part of a lug,
Find a
become
lug.
just be warned, it's detrimental to your savings account. I've known far too many people lock up your credit cards and be responsible. But yeah,
What I'm hearing is budget. Make a Lego budget.
make a Lego budget, become part of a lug. Not only do you get the sort of community, like-minded, sort of fellowship of the brick type feel, but you can bounce ideas off of some of the people that have already been there and built something. You might build something and you like the colors are off. These colors don't work together, and you show it to one of your AFOL friends, and the AFOL friend's like, well, do this, stupid. Like, and it's an easy fix, and you can just change out one color, and next thing you know, it makes perfectly good sense.
It's great to have other people that you can bounce ideas off of, an outside opinion on
Yeah.
what you're building.
Just remember to take some of those opinions with a grain of salt, and don't when I first started getting advice from some of my friends, I used to take it the wrong way and criticizing my mock.
We're all trying to help each other improve.
Exactly. And sometimes what you had in mind they might not recognize that. So you got to do you.
That's the best advice right there.
Like I always tease one of my friends in the VLC for his black sidewalks on this very beautiful bridge that he built. And he refused to change his sidewalks, but that's the vision he had for his bridge.
Hey, he likes them.
Exactly.
And
I tease him about it, but I actually good on him for sticking to his guns and keeping it the way he wanted it.
By the way, I like the term fellowship of the brick. It sounds like when we're all building, we just like go walking through a forest for a really long time together with like one mission, just throw the brick. Mordor. Anyway,
Well, I love it when I go to an AFOL convention, because you get a group of people. It doesn't matter what theme they're interested in, whether they're collectors or builders. They have this one thing in common. They're there because of Lego. And how do you dislike somebody for loving Lego?
You can't. It's a wonderful thing.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Alan. Do you have a website or a link or a page where people could go find more of your work and kind of follow what you're building?
If you look up my name on Flickr, you find pretty much everything that I'm proud of showing.
Excellent. There will be a link in the show notes, of course. And thank you again. This was wonderful. Thank you for taking the time. And we look forward to seeing you at more conventions.
I look forward to seeing you.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
See ya.